Are gold and silver prices being manipulated? I mean, is there some evil entity behind the scenes controlling the strings of the metals market? Are gold and silver being intentionally chained down? Most gold and silver investors will give you a resounding yes to those questions, but a few would say no. I mean, the answer has to be yes, right? I mean, how else could you explain how prices remain so low for so long? How do you explain the 8 or 930 price beatdown that happens almost every day? After all, how could these metals be only worth $1,800 for gold and $21 for silver? Well, there seems to be two sides to this argument. I mean, on one side, no one has championed this issue better than Ted Butler and his Goddess side. And then kind of on the other side, you have smart people like Keith Weiner who've used terabytes of data to prove that the market being manipulated just isn't happening. Then you have people like my Uncle Rick Rule who gives you something slightly different. One of the hardest things to change are long-held beliefs, be them accurate or inaccurate. Life is full of these examples that we believe things that really just aren't true. Sometimes we refer to them as old wives' tales. Regardless, many of us still hold these beliefs as truths. Maybe we believe it because it was told to us when we were young, maybe because we've experienced, maybe because we've heard it over and over again, or maybe a personal authority said it and we never challenged the idea. An example of this that we all remember is the belief that if you go outside with wet hair on a cold day, you'll get sick and catch a cold. That just isn't true. I mean, really, you see, colds are caught by catching or being exposed to a virus. So being cold doesn't really have anything to do with it. Think about it. At the same time, it's sort of kind of true because being cold weakens your immune system, making it easier for your body to catch a virus. But that doesn't stop us from believing that. This brings me to a great quote. The absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. The philosopher and mathematician Bertrand Russell used this idea of a cosmic teapot argument to make this point. He said that even though it could not be refuted, no one should believe him if he claimed without proof that a tiny teapot was orbiting the sun between Earth and Mars. In his words, the rational man will not be so sure that he's right. We ought always to entertain our opinions with some measure of doubt. I shouldn't wish people to dogmatically believe any philosophy, not even mine. To me, both quotes remind me to always keep my mind open because many times it's pretty much impossible to prove a negative, or for the purposes of this conversation, proving that something like market manipulation is or is not happening. I know, you're already thinking, will this dude get to the freaking point about market manipulation? Calm down, calm down. I had to start this way because within our community, market manipulation has become one of those absence of evidence conversations. And ultimately, if we're going to have a healthy conversation, we have to be willing to stretch our minds to the possibilities because when this video is over, my hope is to prove to you that the answer to market manipulation is yes and no. Unfortunately, most people really don't like yes and no answers, but maybe the words of my Uncle Rick Rule can provide you with some comfort.
I never said that I didn't believe it was manipulated. Occasionally. Even the U.S. Treasury market and the LIBOR market have been manipulated. All markets are manipulated.
I think we all can agree with Uncle Rick that all markets are manipulated and ultimately the entire game of investing is 100% rigged against us retail small investors. For those of you who are in the manipulation camp, there's your baseline. Yes, the markets are in fact manipulated, though it does come with a caveat that all markets are being manipulated. Right about now, some of you are probably thinking, wait, Dr. Stacker, what about JP Morgan and those other two banks found responsible for spoofing the markets and that $900+ million settlement JP Morgan had to pay? That's all correct and that's true, but spoofing is not anything that's new to any of these markets. But it's important to note that spoofing can be used both ways, to drive prices lower or to drive prices higher. Even Ted Butler talks about this.
The answer is there's two kinds of manipulation. There's an upside manipulation and there's a downside manipulation.
Spoofing occurs when a trader pretends to sell or buy a particular item in order to drive the market, thereby creating this illusion of the demand and supply of the particular asset, even though the spoofer intends to cancel the order before the orders are filled. Essentially, they're trying to trick other traders into buying or selling. Please notice the highlighted section on their screen. Spoofing may cause prices to increase, more buyers than sellers, or prices to decline, more sellers than buyers. What's interesting about spoofing is that we tend to focus on it when we see it driving prices down and not when we see it driving prices up, both of which can happen in the metals market. Don't believe me? Well, my Uncle Rick Rule's got my back again. Tell him, Unc.
We have seen both ladders and spoofs in various financial markets as long as I've been involved in financial markets. It's very likely the gold and silver markets were manipulated in the 70s too, except they were manipulated up. You manipulate markets in the direction that is the easiest to manipulate them. I know I'll get a lot of hate from your viewers about that.
Notice what Rick said. You manipulate markets in the easiest direction, which means that they don't change the direction. They exaggerate the direction prices are already moving. This is why I don't believe market manipulation, and you'll never hear me talk about only the metals market being manipulated, because manipulation occurs to the downside and the upside. And I'm pretty certain it occurs somewhere in the middle as well. I know you're thinking, well, how do you explain the last 20 years of low metal prices? Well, good old Uncle Rick explains that one again. Here we go.
There were arguments about manipulation in the whole period, 1980 to 2020. Why would you bother manipulating something that was going down of its own volition?
Now, he does go on to say later that their efforts are usually to trigger a short or a long ladder. In the interview I did with Dr. Keith Weiner, he talked about the research he conducted using terabytes of data, which proved that we were actually just witnessing the markets and the banks actually taking advantage of the arbitrage between current prices and future prices. And in that arbitrage, there are millions of dollars to be made with very little risk. And so that explains some of the price action that we see. Essentially reaffirming what Rick Rule said about the spoofing ultimately helps to create a bigger spread between the market's natural arbitrage in order for banks to make even millions and millions and even billions. You can read Dr. Weiner's report, A Thoughtful Disagreement with Ted Butler, which I will link in the description. Here's the reality. I'm highly doubtful that I'm going to change your mind one way or the other. And frankly, that's not even the point. My goal is to present you with good and balanced information that allows you to look at the situation with open eyes, because ultimately, I think manipulation is a nothing burger and something people just bring up to waste our time, justify their limited understanding of the markets, or just because they like meaningful content. Let me explain. Let's just say the markets are manipulated. My first question to you would be, why in the world would you want to invest your money in something that is being so heavily manipulated and something that will never be allowed to reach its full price potential? Seriously, why would you willingly sign up for that? I'll answer that for you in a moment though. The other side of this is you don't believe metal markets are being manipulated any more than any other market, which makes it a nothing burger. Regardless of the camp that you fall in, the market is or isn't being manipulated. On many levels, manipulation shouldn't change a single thing that you're currently doing. As I shared earlier, the absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. So for the sake of this discussion, let's just say the markets are being actively manipulated. What are your options, or what should you do? Well, one, understand that we can't stop the manipulation. And if we can't stop the manipulation, what options do we really have? Play the game or sit on the sidelines and complain? Two, just because the game is rigged doesn't mean you don't play the game. Just because the game is crooked, that doesn't mean you can't win or do very well. Instead, we have to learn how to use that to our advantage. And there are actually several ways to do that, but we'll have to say that for another video. Three, regardless of manipulation and in spite of manipulation, gold and silver has still accomplished their great purpose, being a store of wealth, an insurance policy, and something that protects your purchasing power. Even though you can't do anything about the manipulation, gold and silver are so powerful and compelling that they have been, are, and will continue to be a great investment. Again, who cares if it's manipulated? Four, you continue stacking because you know one day it has to come to an end. And even if we don't see that day, and it's our children or our loved ones that benefit from our stacks, there will be a day where this all unwinds and there will be a violent price correction. And silver in particular will be able to reach unbelievable levels. The unwinding of this act would truly be spectacular. Plus, remember what I just said in point number 3. In the meantime, gold and silver still serve their purpose. In fact, Ted Butler says it best.
A downside manipulation, on the other hand, which we have in force in silver, that the price is artificially low. So that becomes the very best reason to buy silver, is because it's artificially manipulated to the downside. And we know from history that manipulations have to end someday. If it's a downside manipulation like we have in COMEX silver, then the price will truly explode. You couldn't find a better reason to buy silver than because it's manipulated.
This video is a part of my Stop the Insanity series playlist, which I take on topics like these because I do not believe some of these old wives' tale do you or your investing any good. There's a link at the top right here if you want to see more videos related to that. That aside, I agree with Rick Rule. I don't believe there is a grand scheme to manipulate markets only downwards. I believe there are schemes to manipulate markets in whatever direction they can take advantage of to make money. We see this in all markets. My hope is that you don't waste your time or energy being frustrated with price smash downs like we saw today and that we experience from time to time. It's all a part of the game. And if you really believe in these metals, then you welcome these moments because they give you more time to accumulate at a cheaper price. How many of us would love to go back in time and buy silver at $5 and gold at $200? Every single one of us. Well, that's exactly what we get to do right now in 2023 dollars. It's now our turn to buy at levels that we will look back at and wish we bought more. Just like a sword that cuts both ways, any ladders and spoofs that hurt right now will feel very different when they're doing it to drive prices higher. In the comment section, do you think metal markets are being manipulated? Do you even care if they are? Does it change anything for you? Or you can simply put an A+ in the comments to let everyone know that you always stack smarter and never stop learning.